Hello, everybody. We have another edition of the BOS Build DAO weekly code review. And today we have Matt, who's been shipping some pretty amazing things from NDC docs to first one to do Lens integration on BOS. And it's also been developing a bunch of cool SDKs on BOS, as well as a kind of a new framework we'll hopefully get time to cover. So without further ado, Matt, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my name is Matthias, and I've been working on Near for several months. And I actually, developed today the topics that we will cover are the Lens SDK, which I've been building on the ETH Drive hackathon. It was the basics, and later I have made it a little bit more complex and added more features on it. We will cover it during the session. And also I will try to cover also the skip framework, which is the centralized framework that I have built in Near, and it is in experimental phase. So actually it has a lot of work yet to be done, but if it covers some of the most common cases when you are developing a front-end component on Near, and it provides an easier way for developers to interact with the BOS without having some kind of issues that you experience while you start developing. And yeah, so first of all, I wanted to let you know why Lens SDK, why having an SDK. So as you might know, with as long as the BOS components get bigger and bigger, we get the need of having a centralized way, or at least a centralized component where we can actually rely and use in every other component that we want to build, in order to first speed up the process building it, also having some component that has been already tested and is trusted by developers, and also handling complex things that you might not want to deal with while you are developing, and save up a lot of time while doing it. So for this session, I will review the SDK that I have building on Near, and with the features that I have implemented. There's a lot of endpoints in the Lens SDK, in the Lens API. As you can see here on the official documentation, you have a lot of endpoints where you can get, well, an authentication to follow. So basically, this is still in development, actually, because there's a lot of things that still need to be implemented. But I think actually one of the hardest parts, it's already done. Like, for example, authenticating yourself in the Lens, and actually following someone and getting comments or getting a post. All of these is covered. So and for this session, I'm gonna show you how I implemented the Lens profile component, which is the first Lens component built on Near, and how I interact with the Lens SDK to build up the profile that later can be actually fetched dynamically, because you can, for example, set the handle here, let's say mine, which is matb.lens, and you get the information. And Later, I will cover the skip framework. I will try to be very concise because it's very, we could talk for hours, I think, of this framework. So to give you a first glance of what it is, actually, what I was thinking is, well, I'm a huge fan of Vue, of course, of React, but I've been coding on Vue for a long time. And well, as I've seen that the BOS is actually, it has some things that still are not that easy, maybe at first glance, to understand for people that newcomers that join BOS. I thought that maybe it would be great if there could be like a framework, like a script framework, where you can actually start building without having to have having this like knowledge gap, which you need to get to start developing quality components. So yeah, I'm going to start. Yeah, give me a second, please. Yeah, there's some allergy. Okay. So here you have the widget. By the way, I'm using u2.ai, which is for me the best IDE that you can use to develop on BOS components currently. So yeah, so first of all, let's understand how Lens API actually interacts with the well, how the component interacts with the API in order to authenticate. Okay, so you see here that I have implemented a lot of functions which actually are using the SDK to load. Okay, so it's pretty easy actually to use the SDK. You only have to set a state variable, which is here. Here you have the SDK first initialize to null. So later, when you load the widget, you can pass the properties on load, on refresh, loaded, and testnet in case you want to use the testnet. So in this case, for example, unload, well, I think in every case, you have to, once it's loaded, you update the SDK in the state, and on refresh, you update the SDK. Why this is done? Well, so as you might know, if you don't update the state of the component, you don't get the modifications that have been done. In this case, I need this for updating the tokens that we get whenever we try to authenticate, because that token will be used throughout all the API calls that we will make, like, for example, to follow someone or to unfollow someone. And later you have the loaded property, which indicates that it has been already loaded. This is to avoid recursion, because otherwise when you load it, it will load every time and you will get an error. And well, and the testnet. Yeah, so after that, well, after loading the SDK for this component, I am getting the profile, okay, which can be by handle, which is the user.lens profile, or can be by Ethereum address, which actually makes a request to the API, which is from for getting the lens handle. and actually later requesting all the information by this handle. Okay, I'm going to open up also the Lens SDK so I can show you the actual request.
So
Okay.
just to kind of reiterate what's going on here. So there is a Lens API, which is like a GraphQL API where you can read information, and you basically modularize that in the Lens SDK, and you're kind of using a component as a way to interact with the different API endpoints. And then
Yeah.
you're updating the state in the example application, which is how you're actually generating the front end. But for those who might like, Lens is a protocol for those who don't know, where you can like create NFTs for follows, you could collect publications, essentially built on Polygon, and you can like essentially have a social graph here. And so for those asking, in this particular instance of a SDK, you're not actually writing to the blockchain and using like Web3 Connect and Polygon. You're just reading from the API. Is that correct?
Yep, totally. Thank you so much for the you are an expert already. Yeah, so as he said, we are leveraging this GraphQL API in order to connect the Lens protocol to the near protocol and be able to use it in our frontend component. So basically, for this, you need as you can see here, you have all the queries that you perform to the GraphQL. This looks very complex, but actually, if you check the official docs, which is here, you can find all the implementation. It's really well documented. And also, now that the version 2 of the protocol has been released, it's even easier. Yeah, so, okay, yeah, I will keep this here. And yeah, so whenever you want to get, for example, this profile by handle, you have to pass, of course, the handle to the SDK, and this will automatically profile handle. Here, yeah. So basically, what we'll do is call a method which is called request. It's an abstraction. So whatever you call it, it already loads all the default parameters that I might be using, like for example the body of the request and the headers I might need to use. Yeah. So
Can you do a little bit deeper dive into that for those who don't know? Because there's kind of confusion here, because like in BOS, you can't, unless you're running your own gateway, you can't import external dependencies. So when people look at Lens SDK, they
yeah.
might be thinking that you're using Lens traditional SDK. But if you go all the way to can you kind of outline how you're taking the GraphQL API and then turning that into a Lens SDK object, and then how that request works, like before you go into like the actual functions?
Yeah, so basically, of course, like you said, you can actually create your own gateway that use, for example, the official SDK. But the issue here is that these dependencies will work only in that gateway. In case you are using, for example, other gateways like Near or .org or Near Social or Jutsu AI, it won't work. This is because all the dependencies that you load on your gateway are already loaded by it, and so basically the idea of the SDK is that actually any component out there can load this in their component and start building something on top of the SDK, or extending it, or the possibilities are limitless. Yeah, so, okay, as you might know, when you call this, we make the request to the Lens API, GraphQL API, and we get the payload. So whenever we get this payload, we have to update the body data to get the profile. Yeah, so in the end, you end up with something. Yeah, I will show you in the console so you can check it. Yeah, here. Yeah, as you can see here, this is a successful request. You have the body data. And here you have all the payload with all the information for that profile, which is the default handle, the Lens protocol handle, if you don't pass any property to the component. So you get like the follow NFT address, the metadata, the picture for the profile, and also the background, and all the information you might need to create like this widget of the total followers and all that stuff.
So all these helper functions are just you taking a particular like data entry from this payload and kind of putting getters on each one. Like what was the methodology for you breaking down all these helper functions SDK?
Sorry, could you repeat?
So all these different methods right now, are you just basically making like different getters to access a field in that response and then kind of adding that to the state of the SDK? Like what was your methodology for like taking a simple payload, or is it based on every endpoint and how it's structured? Like how are you kind of breaking down, okay, this is an API call. How am I gonna create these functions? Like what was that methodology for like actually like breaking it down one by one?
Okay, yeah, so basically, as you might know, Lens API is in beta. So this means that actually the response might change, the request might change. So in the end, if it is in active development, whenever you create this request, you have to check each time that the payload, or from time to time, that the payload is actually the same. So yeah, whenever I am building like a new endpoint, or integrating a new endpoint, so I try to rely on some existing like platforms that are already using Lens, like for example Lens. And yeah, as Lens is the main platform in Lens, or one of the main platforms, you can rely on those requests. Just give me a second. I have to connect, plug in my laptop. Yeah. So yeah, basically, but of course, you have here all the information, all the inputs that this has. So whenever I try to create something new, for example, I try first the SDK. I create the method and make the call if anything is not working, because sometimes the endpoints might not be working as you expect. So you need to check with the documentation or try to see how other platforms that use Lens are actually using it. Yeah. Okay. So let me. I'm not sure if that answered
So
what you were.
I'm seeing things like follow profile and unfollow profile in here. So how does that work if this is just an API and you're not actually authenticating through here? Like what does that even mean?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get what you mean. So actually, when you have this here, yeah, you have to pass a property which requires a user to log in. Yeah. So whenever you are getting this, you can connect the to your wallet. I will show you the requests that are being done so we can actually analyze them. So whenever you connect your wallet, you choose, for example, in this case, MetaMask. Okay, so once it's connected, it will require you to switch to the Polygon mainnet. Yeah. And it will try to authenticate by signing a transaction. You have to sign this message to prove that you are the owner of this profile. Okay. So when you sign, as you can see here, well, there are so many. Here, you have here the access token, the refresh token, which you only get when you actually successfully connect to the Lens protocol API.
So you are using ethers.js to interact with the blockchain in here. Like you're not just using the GraphQL API.
Sorry?
So you're using ethers.js to actually interact with the blockchain on Polygon. You're using a combination of like the GraphQL API from Lens, and
Yeah.
you're also combining that with. Okay, I was just under the impression that you were just doing read only. So can you kind of go back to the code and outline like where that came in?
Yeah, so basically when you require login, which is here, it will request you to authenticate on Lens. Then, well, sorry. Of course, you have to connect your wallet first, which is that overlay that was this component here. It doesn't allow you to do anything if you don't connect your wallet. So basically, after that, you have to authenticate your Lens account by sending the request, which will send you back a message from the signer, and then you can actually sign the transaction. This is here. So let me show you that method. So you get the challenge here by this address, and this will actually get it from the API. So you pass the address, the stream address, which you want to challenge, and then after that, you try to sign the message. After the message is signed, then you authenticate the signature, and if it's correct, Lens will send you back the access token and the refresh token. Yeah. So after that,
oh no, continue.
Yeah. So after you get a successful response, you set in the token DBT token, the access token, and the refresh token, and set the authenticate through add on success. Well, you can actually pass a callback if you want to do something where you successfully log into Lens protocol. And well, of course, we call the on refresh method to actually update the properties and have the refresh token and the access token.
So in anywhere in the actual SDK component, are you using ethers.js, or are you just using that in the Lens SDK example? Like, how are you separating the actual interactions with the blockchain into the SDK? Like, what's kind of like the thinking behind that? Because
Yeah, so well, of course, there's no other way to authenticate all the API. So you need to have your wallet connected if you want to use the Lens SDK to like perform some actions like following someone or commenting or mirroring something. So the only way is by requesting the user to log into their MetaMask wallet or well their wallet and sign this challenge. And so it's actually the only step that you need to actually be able to interact with the Lens API, because for all other things that you perform with the API, you don't need to actually do that, only the first time. And yeah, so basically, this was the first challenge. I spent a lot of time actually on Prague when I was trying to authenticate the Lens to actually figure out how to do that. So yeah, and this was the solution that we have found out with the team at that time. Yeah, I think it actually makes the trick. Let's say. Do you have any other questions regarding this?
no, I'm like just trying to. I'm actually gonna look at the code right now because I'm like trying to get a sense of like this, like how you pass in like in ethers.js, like the signing of an ethers.js, like a MetaMask wallet through ethers.js into the SDK to authenticate a transaction. How does that data flow work? And
Okay.
is ethers.js
Yeah.
in the actual SDK, or is it only
No,
in the
no.
example?
So yeah. So okay. Well, as when I was developing this authenticate endpoint, so I got the problem that I wasn't able to get the signer. So what I've done is actually a very simple trick, which is having a anonymous function where you can call it will return the either signer and sign the message. So as you can see here, this is what I do here. This is the anonymous function. You have the provider get signer. So whenever you try to sign the request, it will be called, and you will be able to actually sign the message from the SDK.
And then can you kind of go over the data model? Like, so when this is signed, and then the response, like how does it, like how do you know if something is successful and things like, and then like back to the example app, like from the parent to the child?
Okay. Yeah. So basically, when you have the whenever you try to sign the message, you get the well, you have the response promise, and then if it's successful, then it will pass the to this block here. And of course, if you will want to interact to actually catch the error that might happen, like for example, like the user closes the window or something like that, then you might place here the catch function. So in this case, I didn't do that because, of course, it was a matter of time, actually. I was refactoring the code and all that, but I didn't actually realize that here is missing the catch. But of course, it's something that's valuable in order to actually get the proper handling of the flow. So basically, when you get the change, if you get the change for that address, if it's a valid address, then you have the payload, which is the change text. Then you can sign the message. If you get the signed message, then you can authenticate the signature, which sends the signature to the API, and you get back the tokens. So and later, if that's successful, because of course you could provide an invalid signature, like for example, you are trying to authenticate from another account, which that is not the owner of that Lens account. Well, after that, everything is if everything is successful, then you will get the access token and the refresh token. But I agree that of course we could introduce here like error handling, for example, in case you actually are not passing the proper or making the proper steps. Do you have any more questions regarding this endpoint?
No, that's pretty comprehensive. So can you kind of like give like an overview of like what yeah, if you can kind of give an overview of like how the data flows though, like in terms of like um
Uh-huh.
from the SDK to the example.
Yeah, you mean this component, like here, how it works, the flow?
Like how information from the SDK is passed up back into the example, and then vice versa.
Like, so you want me to do like a live example? So I was trying here to require the login, but I'm not sure why it's not working, actually. I was required the login, so I could show you here the list preview. I will, here. Yeah, I'm not sure why it doesn't work. But yeah, if you want, I could explain you. Well, for the component that well, like I was saying before, here you have the payload, and later you can follow the profile. For example, in this case, I can follow the REST protocol profile. You send the request here. Oh, well, yeah, it looks like the actually the endpoints got some modifications, because it might be because of the second version of the SDK. Well, the second version of the Lens protocol. So actually, it's an opportunity to explore or review the uh, the endpoints that has been created. Yeah, so I think yeah, for the follow profile, I have to review what is happening right now.
But you have this like a pattern of like making SDKs even for like the GenaDrop like for your application, you're
Yeah.
using the SDK there. So what is like can you kind of go into that and how you because that's based on also like near interactions too. So what is like what is kind of the quick breakdown of how you began to formulate an SDK for that?
Okay. Yeah. So basically, what I accomplish with the SDK is to have a very abstract library where I can actually reuse the methods and create new methods in an easier way. So, for example, in this GenaDrop SDK, the contracts were quite a lot. So I created a lot of constants. It's very important to have everything, well, at least from my perspective, to have everything placed in proper variables, in this case constants, and have a proper naming, and everything that you are going to repeat using, like, for example, the URLs, the endpoints, the contracts, everything. I start to setting all that first, so later I can use it on the actual SDK that I am building. So here I have the init function, which actually initializes all the default things that I want to load before actually, well, when the SDK is loaded. In this case, I use that for setting the storage of the mint NFTs. As you, if you don't know about GenaDrop, it's a multi-minter, so actually you can mint NFTs in any chain. So, yeah. After that, I set the initialize to true, so I can use it in the parent widget, and I call the refresh method. So after that, we have the mint function, which can be used to mint on near, which interacts with a near contract, or have the default mint, which interacts with a blockchain, like, for example, Ethereum, Polygon, AVAX, or yeah. So for this, of course, I try to like set into methods all the common code that I think that I might reuse for in other methods, like, for example, uploading to IPFS the image of the NFT that it's actually being minted, and yeah. So what I get here is a cleaner code that it's reusable. Like, for example, in this case, upload to IPFS and call it also on mint or near, which actually calls the near contract. And yeah, also I have here the log NFT, which allows me to actually store the NFT that the user has mint, and to show the history of NFTs. So yeah, the pattern I follow is abstraction, as much as you can abstract, and as much as you can first try to like set in constants everything that would be modified, and this will help you during development of the SDK, or even the development of anything you build out there, in order to keep a clean code and actually be able to, of course, also increase the developer experience. And someone is reading your code, and it actually, if you repeat yourself all the time, then the code might get a little bit messy. So yeah, that are some of the rules that I actually have in mind when I try to when I develop these SDKs, and I hope that also this is something I also use for when I develop components right now. Maybe not for the previous, the first ones that I was developing when I started, but I try to to keep it as simple as possible as well, because of course you never know who might be trying to fork your widget and try to understand it. So as soon as you have all the methods with a proper naming and everything is well the code is self-explanatory, then you can you actually, when you read the code, you don't need documentation because you can follow up. Okay, this is uploaded to IPFS, and here it's minted or login the NFT. So yeah, that's basically my recommendation for building it.
You know, it's interesting how you're like calling each contract and like I'm like, can you so do you use near API.js, which is built in BOS in the actual SDK? Do you use Ethers.js? Can you kind of go into because now you have a multi-chain interaction within the same SDK, which I think is a first for a lot of people seeing here. So I see ethers.send and I see kind of like an NFT function be called, but can you kind of outline like how that's executed?
So yeah, okay, yeah. So whenever you call this mid function, you can actually have the different networks. So in case it is near network chain, you can it will mean the NFT or near, and in case it is not the near, it will try to mean the NFT in the blockchain you have chosen. So for example, if you pass here like the as a network the Polygon one, you will actually meet and interact with the Polygon contract, which is this one here, and you will get this information. And whenever you call the mint function, you will be able to save mint, which is a Solomon token, or call the mint function, which is well, of course, this is thanks to the GenaDrop contracts that have been developed and are quite easy to use, and you can actually mint in any chain. Yeah, so I think it's time for trying to give you a brief introduction to Skip framework. If do you agree, Shot?
Yeah, and so you were mentioning like some people might not know even what Vue is. So can you kind of explain the differences between React, which is commonly what like very similar to what the BOS framework is, and then how developing on Vue works, and then what are kind of like the trade-offs of each, so we can get a better understanding of your like mentality of building the Skip framework.
Okay, yeah. So basically, the difference building with React Vue, on Vue you have whenever you start building a component, you have a very different structure because every component is you have the logic from one side, and you can have also the styles from another side, and well, for building new components, you have some concepts to understand. Like, for example, you have watchers, you have compute variables, you have the store as well. So this is actually something that in React works kind of different. So for this, and also, well, I've been working with Vue for the last 5 years. So yeah, and well, when I started working with BOS, I was thinking that it would be a great idea if there could be like more like a cleaner way to have like a pattern that you can actually use to build components. So for this, it came to my mind that the Vue framework actually will make a lot of sense, because it actually does all the stuff for you behind the scenes. So the errors that you get, of course, you get errors, but you can, if you know how it works, then you know you can deal with it. But for building a simple component, for example, it's quite easy, and this is something that could benefit both to have newcomers and new joiners to the new protocol. Yeah. So do you want me to go straight to the framework, because to the example, because we are running out of time, I think.
Yeah, if you can just kind of just run down how this. So you use the where did you actually use the skip framework? Like which in okay, you're better.
Okay. So yeah. So well, as I've said, skip framework is an experimental framework. So I'm not using it right now for building something serious, because of course the errors I might get from building with it, I will need to do some research. So but it was like to place an idea, to have it there, and start developing on top of it. It's actually that I have in mind. I want to open source it in GitHub, so anyone can actually modify it and develop this framework along with the community. So for this, I have created a very simple example. So you have here you have here like the skip framework declaration, which is the state when you get it from the widget. So although you update the state as you get the skip framework, and so the syntax is, I wanted it to be really easy. So whenever you call the skip, you call the create method, then you pass the name of that component. For in this case, is test script. So will you place the name? So basically, one of the features that skip framework has is that you can interact between components and between child components from many levels. So you can actually, from child of a child, call to the parent of the parent. So well, and later you have to use the with which actually is an object of properties which has a store property, the state property, the compute property, and the watch. You might wonder what is all this. So in this case, I'm going to start to the easiest one that everyone knows is the state variables that you want to use in your component. So you have in this case foo, which is Ian. You have all foo, which is not set in this case. You have testing storage and the new bar. So basically, this will emulate like the state of the that is from React. And well, later you have the compute variables, which are variables that whenever a state variable has changed, you can actually update it with the new value. So in this case, you have name. So you have this string, which is hello, my name is, and you can use the full variable with the new update. So you have also watcher, which means whenever you have a property that has change value, you can perform some actions or modify other properties. Like in this case, you have true, and whenever it has changed, you have the old value and the new value, and then you can return an object which is an update of all true with the old value. So for this, I have the example here, which I will show you in this minute that we have. So we have here John. Hello, my name is John. As you can see here, it's we are getting the variable from with this get method. You just specify what you want to get and the variable name, and then you can also get the compute variables like normal ones, like in this case name. So well, whenever you click the change me button, you only call the set method, and it allows you to update the John variable and the full variable to join. Well, and actually it will be the same in this case you have here, but you can see that the previous value was set to John instead of Ian. So in this case, if I set, for example, Matt, so you will see that here the variable will change, and the previous value will be John. So later you have this was for debugging the actual framework. This of course this was one of the examples that I was really when I was using the framework, developing the framework. So yeah, that's more or less it. In case you want to know more about it, feel free to reach me out via Telegram or other like near. And of course, I will be glad to answer your questions. And in case, of course, you want to develop it, I will release it. And well, actually, anyone can access it on your protocol, but I will like create the GitHub so anyone can have access.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. Do you have a hard stop right now? You have to go?
Yeah, sorry?
Do you have a hard stop right now? Like, do you have to go? Because I have a few questions. But...
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. Yeah. Cool. So does anyone have questions?
Yeah, so you mentioned like state from a parent to parent and child to child. Like what are you using within the BOS like VM, the near social VM in order to like create these functionalities? Like what are the primitives you're building on top of for like compute, for like store, for watch? Like how is that being built in
Uh-huh.
SDK?
Yeah. So let me just introduce it here. So you have here the code, and basically, whenever you use the read method, you have the methods that are being called in order to set all the properties that you have set. In case of the store, of course, it use uh, the storage. That's one of the things that I forgot to mention actually. So when you want to store something on the local storage, it is as simple as setting the uh, state variable that you want to persist to true. And actually, the next iteration, when you refresh the page, it will load from local storage instead of the default value that you can set from the state. So this is actually really nice because it's a very simple way to have your variable set in the storage without having to repeat yourself all the time. So yeah, and well, as I was saying, you have the set store, you have the set watcher, set compute, trigger compute, and in the end, something that I call the event chain, which actually leverages the local storage to actually communicate between other components inside the app. So actually, you can, like I said, have a child of a child, which is called in the parent component and is updating the parent component. And this parent component is actually reactive to that. So in case of watchers, when you set the watchers, you have here a list of the methods that, of course, here you set the watchers that you have set. And after that, you have the compute, which you set the compute. And after that, you trigger that. So for this, you iterate over the compute. If it's a function, then you actually pass the state of the framework to that compute variable. So whenever you load whenever you have, for example, like something in the storage and the state variable has been updated, you will get the variable from the storage, not from the initial load. So this is actually helpful because you can actually don't worry about if you have to check if it's something in storage, then you set this. If you don't have it, then you set otherwise. So
Can you go into a little bit of that about like the storage API and how it works on BOS and how you're leveraging it? So for the storage API, you have like a key and then you have like an associated widget. So like what is the widget that you're using? Like is it the
okay,
core framework that you're using and that you're referencing as the widget where all this like storage like is
yeah.
referenced? Like, can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, so basically, on BOS, you have the storage dot get and the storage dot set function. You have also the private set and the private get. So whenever you have whenever you load the component, you have to initialize the event chain. Well, of course, I call that like that, but it's actually just a stack with different states of the component. So whenever you want to load the state, you have to set a timeout, because actually this is something that I have pending to report, because whenever you try to get something from the storage from the first time, you get an undefined value or null value, when actually it has been there's something in that key. So in order to mitigate that, you have to set a timeout with some milliseconds. So after that, you can set the current component event key, which is actually just the event key, which is a constant here, the skip framework dot events key. So in there, look at it like you have like small chains. Every component has its own chain, and whenever you want to interact with them, then you, for example, from a chain component, you add the like the notifications to the chain that you want to use. For example, if it's the parent, you will just add to that chain, and whenever the parent loads, it will fetch that and actually say, okay, yeah, I have one new notification from this component, and then I will do or execute X action. Yeah, so of course it's a bit complex. The structure, I will work on creating more diagrams in order to make it more clear the flow, how it works, how can be improved, because as I said, it's experimental, and I don't recommend to use it yet to build any production, any prod ready components, because you might get errors that are not currently being handled. So, but of course, this is something I have in mind to keep developing this as soon as I get more time, and of course, along with the community, the new community, build the first decentralized framework of the protocol.
Awesome. That's awesome to see you basically work within the limitations of the VM to actually create a new front end framework. Definitely more to dive into. Yeah, we're over time, but yeah, you went over creating your own SDK using the GraphQL API on Lens, and then interacting with Ethers.js from an example app, and then kind of showed how you build a GenaDrop SDK, which leverages a bunch of contracts, including Near. And so it's awesome to kind of see how you abstract with other components and develop frameworks to build decentralized front end. So definitely way to do a deeper dive in the future. Is there anything you'd like to add before we head out?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, of course. And yeah, it has been a pleasure. I really hope that to see more people to be interested on building on top of the Lens SDK, and also to collaborate to build a skip framework. Yeah, It was really awesome. Thank you so much, Shot.
I see everybody.